In response to the great feedback I've had from the initial video that I put up referring to my work at Beckers Green Primary School, this video provides a much fuller explanation of the ideas that emerged and how they've been processed, working with a fantastically creative Year 6 group at Beckers Green. I took two problems into a classroom. First of those was, how can I improve communication across a huge company? And the second was, how can I make people really, really want to buy our product? The class then broke up into groups of 3, with 36 in total, so 12 groups. And each one of those mini groups then worked on one of those problems, putting some drawings together, writing up their thoughts, whatever it might be, to try and generate some sort of creative input to put some ideas together in an unconstrained way. The first of the problems then, which was all about communication across a big company, the first idea that emerged was that of a fantastically creative unicycling mail monkey, which was so elegant and so great by comparison with the newsletter that I just put together for the Ideas Centre, which was in the form of an emailed text with a few images in it maybe. Something I was quite excited about, but comparing that directly with a unicycling mail monkey, I just realised how dull my newsletter was. So I've since stuck it in the bin, and I now transform my approach by generating small video clips of problem-solving exercises on a weekly basis and send those out, hopefully generating a degree of an expectation and enthusiasm when it drops in the mailbox rather than something that just simply slips into the junk. Second idea that came out was having some sort of super duper circular communication device which allowed you to dial up whoever it was you wanted to talk to, book FaceTime, etc., whatever that might be. Which, on reflection, then made me think very hard about my use of social media, not externally from a marketing point of view, but specifically for communicating across the associates that I work with, other members of staff, and maybe customers and clients. And the fact that I ought to be looking at having some sort of internal company-specific social media tool. So I'm actively looking at that. Yammer is one such possibility, Google Plus is another. So that's taking shape as well. Third idea that came out was quite an unusual one, really. The group had put together a town plan, really, which had a town hall, it had a supermarket, and had a railway station, other bits and pieces. And reflecting on that and how it relates to communication was an interesting challenge, but has transformed my thoughts about my website. I'm now going to completely redesign my homepage so that I have a much better planned summary of my various service offerings so that people can see how it all fits together, rather than a very dense opening page which might be a bit glitzy around the edges but does nothing to explain what I do. That's now going to change. So thanks to the town planning group for that one. Fourth idea was having some sort of games gadget, which is referred to as the Sphere, which had a collection of games associated with it. That was an interesting one. It took me some time to explore that and think hard about it, but what it's transformed into is developing some sort of facility on the website where members of the Ideas Centre can submit a problem, and that effectively there's then an invitation that goes out to all the other members of the Ideas Centres to play around with that problem using whatever creative tools they will to generate lots and lots, if you like, a blitz of ideas, creative ideas, all of which are unconstrained because no one has a full understanding of what the problem is, which is part of the delight, of course. But maybe a company or a member puts a problem into the Ideas Centre, and in a week's time they get a package of wild and wacky ideas that come back that they can then process. So that blitz product is now going to be developed on the newly designed website, which will include the town planning, of course, and potentially the social media tool. Fifth idea was to develop some sort of fun factory, to make it fun, to make it a laugh, to make it develop a series of games that would encourage people to communicate more effectively. And the more I thought about that, the more excited I became about it, because I've actually I'm working with a member of the Ideas Centre, one of the Ideas Centres in the Midlands, that works a lot on developing games for corporates, for companies, with games with a serious purpose, which is exactly what I need here. So what I'm interested in doing now is developing a series of games which bring my various service offerings to life, so that people can go into the website, play the games, get a feel for what I do. So that's a really neat idea. Finally, the sixth group in this particular area generated some sort of headset communicator that rejoiced in its ability to teleport. It had holographic chips. It had a whole range of things in there, which was dead exciting. But perhaps the most significant thing for me was that it was linked with sponsorship, which then made me think about all the other things I've been doing and looking at potentially doing sponsorship deals whereby I could get low-cost access to software on the back of the fact that I'm effectively showcasing it to a wide range of organisations, like-minded organisations, all of whom would undoubtedly be very interested in the tools. So that whole idea of sponsorship came out of the group there, so thank you for that. The second problem that we addressed, moving on to that now, was persuading people to really, really, really want to buy our products. And there were three major ideas that came out of that. The first one was a really interesting one at first sight, which was to develop some sort of multifunctional chocolate fountain type thing that was programmable, of all things. The idea was that you could sit there at a computer terminal, maybe an iPad. You could program in what you wanted out of the chocolate fountain, presumably not always chocolate. I think in the case that for the group they put it was Skittles, so the sweet Skittles. You could get as many of those as you want by simply programming it into the iPad. That was a really interesting idea. The more I thought about that, the more my brain started racing in all sorts of different directions. And what's emerged now is the idea of some sort of software tool that I can offer customers so they can type in features of their organisation, various bits of information about sales or costs or labour, whatever it might be. They can then select the area they want to focus their creativity on, and what should come out of the tool is a very clear indication of what the benefit will be in terms of pound notes, quite frankly, how much we can increase their profits directly as a result of the parameters that they put in the first place. So a really neat sales tool. And I've already engaged with a researcher to put a program together around that. We've got a long-term project. I'm going to work with members of the Ideas Centre for case studies and the like. And I'm also talking to Cambridge University, the Judge Institute, to see if there's availability of any students there that could help us out in that particular area. So that most definitely has transformed the way I think. The second idea we had was that the product ought to be scented. It ought to have a smell, it ought to have a whiff, on top of which it ought to be cuddly, of course, and absolutely irresistible. But that idea kind of posed a really strange question, which was, what does the Ideas Centre smell of? And on reflection, whatever it does smell of, it smells of the same thing every single time someone picks it up, which then made me think very hard about how I actually present the Ideas Centre to would-be customers, to people that I'm pitching to, if you like, because I always pitch it in the same way. Yes, there are tweaks and refinements, but the smell of it is always essentially the same. But the more I think about it, some of those customers want it to be exciting, others want it to be underpinned with scientific rigour, others want it to be serious, and some people want it to smell of fun. So what I need to do is think about that pitch far more carefully in order that I tune the pitch to the potential client that I'm going to see. So that's a real fundamental change. Third idea that came out was pop-up shops with some sort of weird deals that would run through those shops on a regular basis. Now the beauty of this, really interesting here, was the idea that a pop-up shop by definition doesn't exist, then all of a sudden it pops up and it grabs the attention, then it disappears again, which made me think about running a series of masterclasses. Whenever I present on the Ideas Centre, I give broadly the same general presentation. So much like the smell issue in the previous idea, now this one suggested I ought to have a much more focused approach from time to time to grab attention of specific marketplaces. So the idea of running a series of masterclasses which would focus on particular areas of business that would not be necessarily of interest to everyone, but will grab the attention of the one or two that I was really focusing on, is a really neat idea. So I'm putting together a series of masterclasses that I can run and pop up at short notice to grab the attention. So, as you can see, a whole raft of different ideas came out of the classroom exercise, and Year Group 6 were absolutely fantastic in taking the ideas and playing with the ideas. The energy in the room and the smile I had on my face when I left the room was just outstanding. And it's lived with me for the 6 weeks, I think, since the exercise. It still gives me a buzz and excites people when I talk to them about it. So thank you so much to Beckers Green Primary School. It was an absolute delight to get involved. And I hope now that we can find some sort of systematic way in which the Ideas Centre members can interface with Beckers Green and maybe other primary schools around the country on precisely this basis. So thank you so much again to Beckers Green. Thank you so much to Year Group 6. And it's been an absolute pleasure.